Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Hazel, and I'm from the Business and Industry Engagement Team, Global Connect Division 3, Singapore Business Federation, in short SBF, and I will be your host for today. For the festival, is part of the program of Global Connect SBF, which is our globalization initiative in partnership with Enterprise Singapore. On this note, I would like to thank our principal partner, Convera, on behalf of SBF for their strong support to the entire festival's initiative for the second year. Formerly Western Union Business Solutions, Convera is now considered as the largest non-bank B2B cross-border payment company in the world. Just a quick housekeeping before we get started. Please take note of the following house rules. Please note that the chat function is disabled. There will be no live Q&A during this webinar due to time constraint. So if you have any question, do drop us an email at globalconnect@sbf.org.sg or post your question in the Q&A panel. We will collate and answer them. This event explores how a range of social, technological, economical, and environmental trends could shape our urban water and waste future in terms of increasing uncertainty and with a future likely to be different from the world we are experiencing today. We are glad to have industry practitioners share scenarios to help us better understand possible pathways into the future of urban solutions, particularly in the water and waste management sectors. For today's program, we will have Mr. Prabi Bansal, Advisor to Board of Directors from select companies operating in water, environment, and energy sectors to share our industry outlook for the Southeast Asia region in the post-COVID world. Next, we will have Mr. Stephen Dooley, Currency Strategies APAC of Convera, to share on managing payments and risk in urban solutions projects. After which, we will have Ms. Kelly Grace Chua, Business Development Manager of Biomax Green, to share about her company case study. Next, we will have Mr. Deepak Pita, CEO and co-founder, Space Age Labs, to share about his company case studies. Before we start today's session, I would like to walk you through SBF and our Global Connect SBF initiative. Global Connect SBF is an initiative formulated to assist Singapore companies that are looking to internationalize for the first time, as well as companies that are intending to expand and deepen their presence in overseas. Global Connect SBF helps Singapore companies to learn about the country and the business opportunity through sharing of useful resources, advisories on free trade agreement, in short, FTA, and structured training. We also conduct overseas visits for members to let them experience and understand local business and culture. Second, we help companies to land on business deals through B2B matching, facilitate market and business development through identifying the right market for businesses and assessing the business capabilities. We currently have 3 SBF overseas offices, also known as Singapore Enterprise Center, in short SEC, set up in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City, and Bangkok, to provide on-the-ground facilitations and in-market assistance. Lastly, we assist Singapore companies to localize in those markets for a sustainable business presence to help to grow and integrate with local network and strengthen their presence. Next, we will conduct a poll to explore your interest in taking your business overseas and at which stage of internationalization your company is currently at. So for the first question, will you be interested to explore financial grants we could help to take your business overseas? And second question is, which stage will you consider your company to be at in relation to internationalization? Thank you very much for your participation. Our first speaker for the day is Mr. Pravi Bansal. Pravi is an advisor to boards of director of select companies operating in water, environment, and energy sectors, and currently developing a new venture in Vietnam. He specializes in capital raising, restructuring, and strategy development and implementation. Mr. Pravi, please. Mr. Pravi, you may unmute yourself now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Hazel, and morning, everyone. I thank SBF to give me the opportunity to share my recent experiences post-COVID around Southeast Asia in the environmental sector. So I would like to sort of walk you through my recent visits in the region and what I see in terms of the developments and activities happening in the region. And it's my personal view of what I see currently happening. And post this event, happy to get feedback from the audience in terms of their own experiences. So one of the interesting graphs I picked up recently on 19th of June last month, when there was a lot of coverage on Europe market, was the massive heat wave causing droughts and water scarcity. And why I picked up is because I distinctly remember my trip to Italy and Po River, and when I read this news about complete drought in Italy, I picked up my eyes and I thought that this may be just to sort of set the stage that we see what we see in Europe is very well reported in terms of how the excessive heat waves and drought conditions is causing massive water scarcity, and something which Europe has not been prepared for. You all have read about 40-degree temperature hitting London, and then number of wildfire raging going all-time high in the recent times. So the climate change is really impacting all of us, and Europe is a pretty decent example from the last 3-4 weeks that we see. Then when I look at our situation over here in Southeast Asia, we have a little more different set of climate change challenges. The foremost being that about 25% of our population lives in low-lying coastal areas, which have massive coastal flooding risk and coastal aquifer, which will have seawater intrusions, which we see in Vietnam, we see in Jakarta, we see in Bangkok market. So big cities, a big infrastructure, large population bases face significant challenge on low-lying coastal areas having aquifer issues. And it is well recognized globally that this challenge has been there, but with the climate change push in the last few years, it's more and more getting visible and being addressed. The other interesting from a solution provider perspective is that we see that in our part of the world, we have large parts of aging infrastructure, poor O&M maintenance, and large part of the databases in terms of networks and for water infrastructure tends to be quite weak. And there is a lot of leakages in the transmission infrastructure. We see a lot of pollution, indiscriminate dumping of garbage and waterways, and lack of urban planning, which is increasing the flooding. So what we see is the flooding in a lot of parts of Southeast Asia is also to do with lack of poor urban planning and management. And Ho Chi Minh, Jakarta, and Bangkok are the 20 largest cities in the world which have got annual flood losses. So across Southeast Asia, we have multitude of challenges where we have got rapid industrialization, poor maintenance of infrastructure, limited coverage, and lack of disconnect in terms of number of policies or initiatives the governments in these countries take in terms of managing the climate change. Having said all that, which we all sort of know in the backyard, and we have a very good example out of Singapore, how Singapore is managing all that. it drives home the point that the climate change has thrown up multiple facets as a business owner to think about from a climate change implication. I picked up this note from Oxford, the UK regulator. I found it quite interesting, where they divide the challenge into 7 parts, basically. They talk about precipitation challenge, where we're seeing increasing risk of droughts in the water supply networks, issue of high temperature, less rainfall, causing a lot of scarcity in the water resource, something which we all, when we develop projects or we look at solutions to the projects, we look at it, but the amount of data that we have today makes it imperative to go a little more deeper and trying to sort of attack these challenges in a more holistic and a long-term manner. We see a lot of treatment challenges where we have the dislocation of operations purely because of heavy downpours having across operating areas, which includes more challenges for requiring more treatment. Similarly, the distribution networks suffer a lot when we have got a lot of flooding happening, pipeline burst and leakages. The demand surges that we're seeing in the power sector and in the water sector in the last 1 year because of excessive heat, and also the uncertainty of demands in the industrial side, in the industrial consumers, have also sort of thrown a lot of challenges around because led by climate change. Drainage, the waste management systems, as we all know in our part of the world, is quite stressed, and that continues to sort of showcase with the climate indicator and multitude of challenges. And similarly, in the wastewater discharge and sewage treatment, massive carbon intensive industry. So it throws a multitude of, I would say, aspects which one has to sort of look at when you're looking at the climate implications and solutions around it. And the interesting part to look at is that in our part of the world, there are 2 parts if I were to look at. One is the migration part, where I see a lot of projects or investments happening, especially in the solar side, in recycling, and increasingly in biogas, which is picking up on scale, especially in the developed market. And we see that it's also seeping into our part of the world, basically. So migration is sort of seeing a interesting growth in the region across all the markets, and especially around the water sector, less so on the sewerage side, but definitely on the solar and recycling, especially biogas treatment, I see a lot more activity happening. The other interesting part, which is adaptation, which is more an opportunity, also a challenge, is that the whole gambit of our existing water supply networks and providing water access or equitable access across the region is quite average. I'll showcase that in the next few slides. And that sort of throws an amplitude of opportunities for us to think about in adaptation space. And adaptation also includes massive opportunities from the non-revenue water challenges, which we see across the region, and also around looking at recycling the used water, which what we call as new water in Singapore. So there are a multitude of ways to look at a more migration and both mitigation and adaptation opportunities, which we see in the water and waste sector. If you look at the total market for us, water and waste globally is about $900 billion market annually, and Southeast Asia is somewhere around $20 billion market. So if you look at all our countries in this region, we literally spend about $20 billion every year in this market. And the good part is that our growth rates are much better than the developed markets out of Europe and US. So typically, the water market grows around 4% globally, but our growth rates are much higher, especially in countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. So if you look at the key markets, basically, I currently see a lot activities happening in markets like Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, especially after post-COVID. Also Malaysia, in terms of a lot of network improvement work being undertaken because of last year flooding and a lot of contamination in rivers in the last year. So when talking to various players, I see that the market post-COVID has really come up quite well in our region. And I see a significant growth continuing across the markets out in the region. This graph I really like. It sort of summarizes the opportunity that we have in our region. So if you look at this graph, what it indicates, it showcases the first is the population, then the network, and how much is the NRW in our region. So if you look at Singapore as a simple example, where we have got 100% water coverage and NRWs are about 5-6%, and we go around Singapore to various countries. Vietnam, we only have 35% network coverage and 24% NRW. Philippines, only 58% population have water access through pipe networks, and on 22% NRW. Indonesia, only 18% people have pipe network water connection and 33% NRW. Malaysia, great networks, but very high levels of NRW, basically. So this graph summarizes the scale of opportunity that we as players coming out of Singapore needs to sort of capture and develop and continue to pursue these markets, depending upon how each of the players look at their own domain and expertise and risk appetite. So the market is quite large, open, and is really calling in for increased investments, both on the water side and also on the waste side. But more on the water side, it's much more economically productive. On the waste side, I do see still pockets of challenges given the business models that we see in the various parts of the region. One important thing that I see is important in the post-COVID world is that for the companies to really capture and grow in the relevant market is to really have a very strong balance sheet with a long-term perspective, because the nature of infrastructure we are trying to address needs a long-term perspective and a very strong balance sheet. The other important CSE is that each of the markets, though it's a $20 billion market, but still each of the markets are different from the regulatory environment, from the standards perspective and implementation and the SOEs that you would land up dealing with. So it's very important that we need to have local presence and very strong project execution skills. Because when I see local players, they are doing exceedingly well and they're very good at adapting technology. You'll see some of the new technologies later on in the presentations. And I see these technologies getting picked up by local players quite well. So it's important that players from Singapore, when they're going into these markets, they really have a very strong project execution delivery model on the ground, basically, because we do have issues of cost competitiveness when we go out and operate in our region. The other important thing I see is there is a strong need to engage, especially in the water and waste sector, in terms of end customers, local procurement rules and regulatory environment, because each of our markets have very different, unique regulations. And it's important that we really get a good grip on that to manage both the opportunity and the risk. And lastly, I see the most important thing is engaging with multilaterals, who are still playing a very significant role in pushing projects in the region, and also trying to educate governments how to develop projects, especially on the climate change and adaptation side. Equally so, I see that a very strong appetite for climate impact funds and blended finance institutions to really playing a very effective role. And coupled with Infrastructure Asia and SBF, what they're doing, I see that the market is quite large for everyone to really grow in this region. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Pravi, for the informative sharing. So if you have any question, please post your question in the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen, and we'll collate them and to answer them. Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Dooley, Currency Strategies, APAC and Convera. Stephen worked in financial sectors for more than 15 years. Originally covering markets such as a journalist, Stephen later worked as an investment specialist at Global Fund Management Group, Aviva Investors, and head of trading at Research House Australia Stock Report. Mr. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Hazel, and thank you for the introduction, and also thank you to Mr. Pravati for a very interesting look at the region. I'd like to thank everyone for having me here today, the Singapore Business Federation in particular, and we're very proud at Canberra to have been able to support the FYI Festival over the last 2 years. First of all, and Hazel already gave us a good introduction to Canberra, but just to really clarify, that's the new trading name of Western Union Business Solutions, and we're the largest non-bank business-to-business cross-border payments company in the world, and we really focus on delivering smarter money movements to our customers and helping them capture more value with every transaction. So it's an exciting time for the Canberra family as we change from being part of Western Union to our standalone business, and we're certainly going to continue to be focused on really helping businesses understand how to transact in an international space and to help businesses grow internationally. And that's why we are so proud to be able to continue to support the SBF and their focus on helping businesses trade internationally. Now, why are we here today? So, of course, FX is always critical for international businesses, and it's even more so for infrastructure projects because of their long lead time with infrastructure projects. Some of them can go 3, 5, 7 years. The impact of foreign exchange movements can be considerable, but also because the flow of funds can be extremely complex. In some circumstances, if you're raising funds in international markets in US dollars, bringing them back into Singapore dollars, they might be held in an account in Singapore for a sustained period of time and then might be directed to whatever country the infrastructure program is being operated in. At the same time, you might be receiving step payments from the end customer that the infrastructure project is being delivered for. And so you'll have monies coming in from one currency, going out in another currency, and then potentially circling back. And so with the very long timeframes, that can have a major impact on the profitability and the viability of the funds. So just have an example of the US dollar Singapore dollar pair over the last 5 years. On average, the US dollar Singapore dollar pair moves about 9% per year. But of course, there are times when it moves a lot more. And you can see that during 2020 and 2021, we had quite substantial moves, particularly as the first impact of the COVID-19 pandemic impacted on markets. So looking at that, a 10%, 15% move in a relatively short amount of time can have a major impact depending on the overall margin for the infrastructure project you are developing. Now, of course, that's in a more developed market, the US dollar Singapore dollar pair. In more volatile markets like emerging markets here, looking at the Singapore dollar versus the Malaysian ringgit, you can see quite extreme moves, and we've seen very extreme moves as the ringgit fell over the course of this year, mainly caused by a worry about global slowdowns and rising US bond yields, which typically impact emerging markets. So you can see that the complexity of potentially raising US dollars, bringing into Singapore, and then potentially getting paid in Malaysian ringgit can really have a major impact, particularly if you're in an impact where the US dollar is falling, the Malaysian ringgit is falling, you've raised money, you might not have enough that you originally estimated, and the returns and payments might not be enough either. So that's why foreign exchange can be so impactful. And of course, over the last 6 months, we've seen a number of US companies say that their profits have been hit because the US dollar is so much higher. The revenues they've been producing offshore have been less when they're translated back into the US dollar. So FX can have a really complicated impact on markets. If we look at the current forecast that we have for the US dollar Singapore dollar pair that we've produced in line with our economic partners, Oxford Economics, you can see that there is an expectation that the US dollar will fall over the next 12 months. The US dollar, of course, is at a 20-year high, being boosted by those rising interest rates. If it does fall and you've raised in US dollars, then you can suddenly be seeing that you have less to be able to fund the project. So you can see the complexity that we have in the foreign exchange process. In infrastructure, it's more complicated than a lot of programs. For a lot of our clients, they'll be importers or exporters and then selling to a retail space. And the complexity for an infrastructure project is much greater. Now, there are two key processes of the infrastructure project. Initially, the tender process, where you've got the obligation to deliver if the contract is approved from the customer. But if the project is not won, then you have no obligation. So you have an uncertain exposure that you need to manage, which is why the tender process can be complex. The execution of the project, as we already mentioned, involves a number of shifted variations in funding, the different currencies, the timing, and the payment. So it does become extremely complicated. In the tender process, you have, as we say, you have the exposure, but no guarantee of obligation. If you don't win the project, you don't have the obligation or the exposure. If you do, then you have got the obligation. And in fact, you've had it for the whole time you've been waiting for the tender process to play out. So you need to think about, is your business comfortable holding the risk? Many businesses are. Is there a possibility to reprice? You might have a clause in the tender saying if the Singapore dollar falls over the next 3 months, then we're able to reprice. It might be a benchmark of 10%. How can you hedge without obligation? There are certain products like options that allow you to hedge without the obligation, but some businesses are happy with the obligation. If you're a large multinational with many different programs, you might say we're happy to have obligation in our hedging. And as we'll explain in a moment, that tends to be cheaper, less flexible, but some businesses are happy having that program. In the execution stage, if you've won the tender, there are a number of potential variations to consider. Where is the funding coming from? Is it funding full or partial? Is there an escrow phase? And a third currency, like we mentioned, in that escrow phase where it's held in a third currency. If you've raised in US dollars, you're holding in Singapore dollars, and you're paying in Malaysian ringgit, then again, that adds complexity as well. The program is also impacted by when do you receive payment? When does the customer pay? In which currency? And will the payment be used to fund further construction? If the customer pays in local currency, what foreign exchange impact will that have? So you can see it's extremely complicated. Well, the way that we normally help our clients to manage this, and this isn't us, this is all businesses that manage risk in the FX or a lot of different risk spaces, is understand what worked in your previous project, have goals in place, what are you looking to manage, have a plan in place, and then execute the plan with someone in the organisation that's responsible for how the plan is executed. The plan is delivered and developed from a stakeholder director level, but it is executed by a more junior role. They need just to execute in line with the program. What will normally happen for businesses is they will have incremental coverage. So when you're thinking about making payments, you'll make sure you're fully hedged for the first few months, depending on the time frame, and then months that are further out will be partially hedged. And you hedge to make sure that any currency movements don't impact on your cash flows or profitabilities. Now, there are three main ways of hedging that exposure. The natural hedge is why we were asking about how will you get paid. So again, if the example is that you have operations, the project in Malaysia, and you are paying in Malaysian ringgit to produce to produce the project. If you're getting paid in Malaysian ringgit, then that becomes a natural hedge. If you're paying in US dollars and receiving income again in ringgit, then that's a new FX risk that you need to manage. As we mentioned, what the most common way for businesses to hedge is using forwards. These guarantee a rate. They tend to cost less than an option, so there's less give up, but there is less flexibility. And that's why in the tender process, the options are often an opportunity for businesses because they provide you with certainty over the rate, but they also, a worst case rate, I should say, certainty over a worst case rate, but there's no guarantee or obligation. You don't need to make that necessarily payment. So it's that flexibility in options that cover but don't provide obligation that tend to be beneficial. So in conclusion, when you are financing your infrastructure project, you need to consider these points. FX is volatile and unpredictable. This creates a risk. And as we mentioned, in an infrastructure project, which is very long lasting and might have a number of different payment dates and a number of different currencies, it becomes even more volatile. But the right risk management process, like you have in all other parts of your business, will help you manage that exposure. Have a plan for managing your FX exposure and bring predictability to cash flows, payments, and profits. Make incremental and regular changes to your FX management. So you don't go with a decision and make that decision at the start of the process. You need flexibility. And so you have a long-term strategy that's regularly executed to take advantage of market moves. Overall, FX provides a business opportunity, but businesses should not be FX traders. And if there's someone in your organization that says we shouldn't manage this because the US dollar is going down or the Malaysian ringgit is going up, that's a risk that you just can't take on because no one knows for certain and unexpected events can occur all the time. Look back to the start of 2020, no one forecast COVID-19. They're the kind of risks that you're looking to manage. So this is what we're looking to do at Convera, to really help businesses recognize that risk, recognize that opportunity, and we can certainly help, whether it's a small regular payment that you're making to import goods into Singapore or whether it's a large, complex, multi-layered project such as the infrastructure or water project. And that's it for me. Hazel, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stephen. Thank you for the insightful sharing. So next, if you would like to be connected to Convera, please select yes, and we will follow up. Yes, would you like to be connected to Convera? Yes. Thank you. So our next speaker is Miss Kelly Graystra, Business Development Manager at BioGreen. Kelly specializes in business expansion and is responsible for bringing green technology and educating the business partner about waste recycling. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Hazel. Sorry, something wrong with the slide on my side. I'm not sure why. Good morning to all the audience and delegates. A big shout out to SBF for inviting Biomax to share about technology. I will now jump straight into our presentation today. Okay, Biomax is founded in 2009. We have over 10 years of track history right now. Based in Singapore, Biomax focuses on biotech development, revolving waste reduction, recycling, reducing landfill and incineration, and most importantly, how to create a sustainable system on waste management. Now, we are proud to be a Singapore company that has our very own team of doctors and R&D personnel, and of course, our very own clean lab. We are the originator and inventor of our current technology. It is not purchased, it is not licensed from overseas, it is a real Singapore invention. So in a nutshell, Biomax's zero waste solution converts organic waste to organic fertilizer within 24 hours. Now, this is a picture of our lab, okay? You can see we have our facilities and our doctors and our R&D personnel. Okay, so since 2009, Biomax has entered into several countries in various continents, and we are still striving to spread our wings to more untapped market. And that's why we are working closely with SBF to achieve this objective. These are some of our awards. We are privileged to receive several renowned technology awards, namely 4 of them, which we are very proud of. The ASEAN Business Award by the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the Entrepreneur of the Year Award by Rotary Singapore SME, the Emerging Enterprise Award by OCBC Bank, and Singapore Sustainability Award by SBF. Let's look at Biomax patented digester technology. Okay, so this is an enclosed system. As you can see on the bottom, we have our digester with a boiler there. The digester basically accelerates the fermentation process and contains all the foul smell during the process. It uses aerobic digestion method, so it does not produce harmful byproducts or bad gases, merely just water vapor. It is designed to treat waste at high temperature up to 80 degrees Celsius. And because of this high temperature, we are able to remove all harmful pathogen, and the output is completely odorless. Being Singaporean, we understand space constraint. So we designed the digester in a very, very compact manner, so it does not require a huge space to operate. Next, let's look at Biomax flagship invention, which is our enzymes technology. This is our BM1 enzyme. It does 70% of the work in the entire digestion process. In most cases, most enzyme would have perished at 50 to 60 degrees Celsius, but BM1 enzyme actually thrives and works best at 80 degrees Celsius. This is the key reason why BM1 enzymes survive the process and can continue to nourish the soil when you apply it to the crops or the plants. With our technology, there is absolutely no crushing required. Organic waste like bones, dead animals. Oh, sorry. Okay, allow me to repeat. Organic waste like bones, dead animals. It could be a dead chicken, lamb, cow, pig. You can name all of them. Everything can be digested by our enzymes without crushing. There are some other ways that are challenging to process. For instance, our favorite curry gravy, right? Watermelon skin, and many, many other fruit skin. In most cases, other enzymes would not be able to process it, but BM1 enzymes can process all of that. Our final output organic fertilizer is high in nutrient with at least 60 to 70% organic matter. It is absolutely pathogen-free and is odorless. Our technology is mature and is patented in many countries around the world. These are just 3 of the patents that I'm showing here. On the left is Japan, and then center is Korea, and on the right is actually the US. Now allow me to explain how simple the entire digestion process is. We start with step 1, okay, which is inputting of all the waste, organic waste. Simply add in the waste into the digester and then add in BM1 enzymes. The ratio is about 1 ton of waste to 1 kilogram of BM1 enzymes. Step 2, we let the digester run for 24 hours. It is fully automated. It does not require any manning, so we do not require a lot of manpower. Step 3, after 24 hours, high nutrients, organic fertilizer will be output. At the same time, when you unload those output, you can load in the new waste into the digester and the process will repeat itself. These are some of the examples of organic waste that can be processed with our technology. So food waste, aloe vera waste, whole dead chicken, orange pulps, dead chicks, corn waste, human feces, horse manure, chicken manure, palm oil waste, you name it. Anything that is classified as organic waste is applicable. Biomax have a line of products developed by our R&D team, and they are sold at retail level. Now, retailing is not our primary business, but it is essential for us to gather feedback from the end users on how Biomax products has transformed their plants or their crops. So Biomax brand is currently one of the top most recognized organic product in the marketplace. You can Google about it. Lastly, I'm proud to share with the audience that not all organic fertilizer products are certified. Biomax is already certified by renowned EcoCert for Japan, USA, and Europe. And these are the 3 certs that you can see on screen. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. If you have interest or inquiries, please contact Biomax directly. Thank you for having me and lending me your ears and attention. I shall now hand over to the next speaker. Hazel, over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for the good sharing. Our last speaker is Deepak Pita. Pita is CEO and co-founder of Space Age Labs. The Space Age Labs is a deep tech startup providing IoT and remote monitoring solution for urban water and greenery management in Singapore, Australia, and US market. Deepak previously worked as a control system engineer designing multi-million-dollar offshore oil and gas platform and seawater plants. Mr. Deepak, please.
Thank you, Hazel. I hope everyone can hear me. Thanks for this opportunity to share a little bit about what Space Age Labs is doing in the water industry. So let me see if I can move this. Yeah. So I think a good context has been set by the speakers before me about the importance of the water industry. So I'll focus a bit on the digitalization angle of this industry, right? So as a company, Space Age Labs provides Internet of Things or remote monitoring solutions for remote assets in the water and greenery industries. I think the first step is to understand in what context we are. So if you look at the world today, I think 50% of the world lives in cities. And by 2050, it's estimated that 70% of the world will be in cities. So this puts a lot of pressure on existing infrastructure. And it's obvious that we cannot manage the infrastructure in the same way as we have been doing it for the last few years. So this leads to the requirement of a data-driven digitalization or predictive nature of management for these infrastructure. There are 2 areas within a city that are very important for its survival. One is water, the other is greenery, right? So these are the 2 areas which are essential for human survival, as well as these are industries where most of the assets are outdoors or remote, right? So it's very labor intensive. So that's where we decided to form Space Age Labs to use Internet of Things technology and machine learning software to basically provide a data-driven or predictive maintenance path. So we are a Singapore-based company and now expanding into Australia and US, as Hazel mentioned. Our core technologies are wireless Internet of Things and cloud-based machine learning. So these are some of our customers. It's a mix of water utilities like PUB, or it could be industrial customers like Roche, PepsiCo, or it could be facilities such as Changi Airport Group and Resorts World Sentosa. So this in one slide is all the offerings that we have for the market right now. So the ones in the blue are the ones that are focused on the water industry. So as you can see, we design and manufacture our own wireless IoT devices, which send data wirelessly to our software that is hosted on cloud servers. We have 2 key products for the water market. One is called Remote Eye. So Remote Eye is a sensor agnostic platform to monitor any kind of remote sensors or assets, and I'll show you some example later on. And Hydro Eye is a machine learning platform specifically for water utilities such as PUB, where they can manage their sewers, their pipes, their drains in a predictive manner. And we'll look at one case study later on for this. So as I mentioned, we provide both hardware and software. So our hardware is called RI-IoT transmitters. These are completely wireless. Their subscription cost is around $1 per month for the SIM card. And they transmit data to our software, which is hosted on Amazon's or Microsoft servers. So they are pretty scalable in nature. So if you're monitoring 10 assets or 100,000 assets, we can scale very quickly. We have some proprietary machine learning algorithms to use the data that's collected and provide you insights. And all of this data can be visualized using mobile and web apps from anywhere in the world. So just a few examples of how this has been applied so that you get an intuitive feel. So the first photo over there is to detect heavy metals in the wastewater network. So as you know, as Pravi was mentioning, Singapore recycles its entire wastewater, and that's called new water. So what goes into our sewers are as important as what goes into our rivers, right? So we are monitoring for PUB around at 175 locations. What is the quality of the sewer water? The other use case, the second photo, is more to prevent flooding. So we install sensors in the manholes, and in real time, we are measuring the level of water flowing through the manholes. And if we see there's a sudden surge, then we are able to predict this and inform PUB to take some actions. The other two are more industrial use cases where we are monitoring tankers as well as consumption monitoring of water. As water is becoming scarce, a lot of industries are now looking at how we can use data to reduce our water consumption. So if you look at holistically on a water and wastewater ecosystem, there are various areas and various use cases. We provide a solution that fits in most of the areas, not only for utilities, but also for industrial use cases and building and facility management use cases as well. So it could be in the freshwater distribution network, it could be in the wastewater network, it could be where you have decentralized systems like a Biomax system, for example, or it could be within a building or a facility that we are monitoring the water network. Just to give you a case study or the case or the scale of these kind of issues in the water industry. So if you look at Singapore, we have around 3,600 kilometers of underground sewer pipes, which is around 100,000 manholes. All right, so to go and physically check all of this is really difficult. And what happens is as time goes by, chokages or blockages occur due to fat, oil, and grease within the pipes. And then when there's a chokage, there's no way for the water to go but come out, as you see in the photo on the left side. But the problem is the current solutions to monitor such situations are very reactive, and there was a need for predictive maintenance. So we are working very closely with utilities such as PUB to install sensors in the manholes. What it does is every few minutes it transmits the data to the cloud, and you can see at the bottom we are monitoring the trend. So if we have algorithms that constantly monitor this, and if we feel that there's a blockage building up, like you can see on the right side, once the blockage is built, the water starts to accumulate. We are able to say that, okay, there's a blockage being formed, why don't you go and clean the pipe, right? So instead of relying on guesswork or someone complaining about it, we are able to do predictive maintenance. So the next few slides are just some other use cases where the same technology can be used. So as I have already mentioned, industrial and facilities are trying to reduce the amount of water they're consuming, but step one is to know how much water you're consuming. So we provide solutions where you can monitor how much of water you're using on a daily basis, weekly basis, or process basis, depending on what your use case is. Similarly, it could be for energy as well, because within the water ecosystem, energy is also a big area where you use a lot of energy either for purification or for pumping, depends on which part of the water network you're. So using energy data also becomes important. It could be even equipment conditions, like whether your pumps are working well, whether your compressors are working well. So we have solutions where you can monitor, say, the vibration or the temperature of the equipment. And if it's beyond normal, then you can take some actions before the equipment breaks down. These are some photos of water quality monitoring. So the left photo over there is actually on the Johor River. So we are actually monitoring the salinity level in the river because as Pravi initially was mentioning, there's a lot of issue of seawater infiltration, not only in groundwater, but also in rivers and backwaters. So the monitoring of water quality, whether in the freshwater network or the wastewater network, is important, and that's something we can help you with. Even within facilities, like this is a photo from the Singapore Zoo. So these are the fish tanks and the crocodile tanks. They need to really monitor what's going on with these tanks for the sake of the health of the animals. So traditionally, it's a very manual process. You go down, check the level, the water quality. But now with these automated systems, at the tip of their fingers from anywhere in the world, they know what's going on with their the tanks which are located in the zoo, right? So, and if anything goes wrong, an alarm is raised and they can take immediate action. Similarly, this is in Sentosa at the Resorts World. So this use case was around detecting leakages. So it's a water theme park. So if the loose water or the pumps are flooded, then they have significant downtime. So with an IoT solution like ours, they're able to pinpoint where there might be leaks early on and then prevent damage to equipment or downtime. Yeah, so all the solutions that you've seen are completely designed in Singapore, designed and manufactured in Singapore for the hardware, as well as the software the software team is in Singapore. So our specialization is end-to-end IoT or remote monitoring solutions for the water industry. We are also in the greenery industry, but I think the topic of the discussion today is water, so I'll keep it to that. So you can always visit our website, or you can email me anytime if you want to know more about what we do, or you have some ideas on how you can use IoT to improve your business. Thank you so much for your time, and back to Hazel.
Thank you so much, Deepa, for the good sharing. So if you are interested in one-to-one business consultation with us, simply email to ie@spf.org.sg, and we'll be happy to meet you to offer a consultation session. So next, there will be 2 upcoming webinars on MedTech India post-COVID MedTech opportunities, and business in Africa, sometimes challenging, always promising. If you are interested, please scan the QR code provided on the slide to register or contact us for more information. We will appreciate it if you could give us your feedback on today's webinar. Your feedback is valuable to us and will help us to improve our future webinars. Kindly scan the QR code on the screen to access the feedback form. On behalf of the Singapore Business Federation, we would like to thank everyone for making this event a success. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again. Thank you.